Alternative energy. Is it a fad or is it the future? We've heard all the talk about solar power. We heard the talk about batteries and now offshore wind energy. Today, we have a great, phenomenal guest here with us from Dominion Energy, the president of Dominion Energy Virginia, to talk to us more about it. And in the second half hour, with the impending trial of Derek Chauvin, the officer that killed George Floyd, we want to know, what are your thoughts on hot topics? This is Say the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Eric Claville, and you're listening to State of the Water here on WNSB Blazing Hot 91 on the campus of Norfolk State University. We want to thank everyone who dialed in to join us on this beautiful Sunday day. I'm telling you, it is a phenomenal day, especially with all the rain and the weather that we've had. And it looks like people are getting out and enjoying the weather, getting some fresh air. And listen, after all that we've been through, we know that we do need some fresh air. Keep in mind, we will get through this together. Today, we have a phenomenal show. We always bring policymakers, movers, and shakers to you, the community, to discuss issues that are important to you. And today, we're going to discuss a topic that, we really don't think about, but to be honest with you, it is, without it, we really can't operate. And we've got no other than the president of Dominion Energy Virginia here to join us on the show, President Ed Baine. President Baine, so glad to have you on State of the Water.
Dr. Claville, thanks for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Same here. Look, just as a note, I want to again mention that Dominion Energy is a phenomenal partner of Norfolk State University and also the Center for African American Public Policy here at Norfolk State University, located in our College of Liberal Arts here. And Dominion has been one to not just invest money into the university through their philanthropic giving, but also to really invest in the students, by the grants that they've given and so forth. So we really thank Dominion for being a great partner, and we recognize that partnership not just over the last year, but over the course of time. President Baine, if you could, tell us a little bit about yourself to the audience, and how did you become president of Dominion Energy Virginia?
Well, it's been a journey, and a lot of folks have helped me along the way, but it started in rural Southside Virginia. I'm a native of Virginia. I grew up in Lunenburg County, raised on a tobacco farm, and, our family has roots there since the days of slavery, and they put in a lot of work and sacrifice for me to be here today. My sister and I are first-generation college kids. I'm an electrical engineer by training, a proud Hokie from Virginia Tech. And, I've had a lot of job opportunities at Dominion Energy. I started as an intern, and, there were people who, saw something in me, gave me an opportunity, and, through a lot of work and opportunities, different jobs, 26 years later, I'm very humbled and honored to be president of the electric utility serving Virginia and Northeast North Carolina.
Absolutely phenomenal. And look, no offense to the Cavaliers who are listening to the station as well, but we're so glad to have a Hokie here on our call today. And I wanted to ask you how you rose from where you grew up to become president of the company, because I think everybody has a unique story, and I think everyone's story has to be told. Because you can clearly inspire the next generation. So I want to get this conversation started about a new initiative that Dominion Energy is engaging upon. It's the Coastal Virginia Offshore. A little bit more about. Tell us about that project.
Definitely. So our customers, the Commonwealth, and other stakeholders expect us to be part of this climate change solution and to build a cleaner energy future. And we're committed to meeting those expectations. So the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind, it's a transformational project that has really been a decade in the making.
Wow.
And represents a series of firsts for Dominion Energy and the industry as a whole. We just completed our pilot project, which is, 2 6-megawatt turbines that we finished at the end of last year, and it's the first project like that installed in federal waters, and the only one developed and owned by our electric utility. And so that gives us the foundation for our larger project. And for the larger project, we expect it to be complete in 2026. It'll be the largest offshore wind project of its kind in the nation.
Wow.
And it represents a multi-billion-dollar investment in clean, renewable energy.
You know, you mentioned several points that we hear a lot in media and news and so forth. You mentioned climate change. What is the impact of climate change on our energy sector itself?
Yeah, so if you think about the impacts, look at Texas as an example and the challenges that it creates from severe weather, and it's just not winter weather. It can be more severe hurricanes, windstorms, etc. And then, as an industry, we've been working very hard to do our part. If you look at our history, we've been moving to a cleaner energy mix, closing coal power stations, building solar, building natural gas, and ultimately building this larger offshore wind project.
Well, you mentioned Texas, and actually I was thinking about Texas when you mentioned climate change. And one of the aspects that we saw is that, they have, diversity of energy, but for some reason, the diversity of energy just didn't work in those in that type of weather. So when we talk about wind energy, why wind energy and not solar and these other quote unquote alternative energies that we have?
Yeah, so we're doing both. If you think about it, this will add a large-scale carbon-free resource to support the Commonwealth's goal of 100% carbon-free energy, electricity by 2025.
Wow.
And by 2045, I'm sorry. And it enhances reliability because the peak wind output occurs at different times in solar. So they complement each other in addition to some of the other fuel sources that we have for generation. So it adds that diversity of energy resources, which is important for the Commonwealth and the region as a whole. In addition to that, this wind energy project will help Virginia become a national leader in offshore wind and creating a domestic supply chain hub anchored here in the Hampton Roads.
Now, you mentioned these turbines, these wind energy fans, and I know the proper word is turbines for them. People talk about the coast of Virginia's coast. I mean, many people come to Virginia Beach saying it's the most gorgeous beach here we have on the East Coast, and people travel from far and wide. And one argument that I've heard against wind energy offshore is that, it's going to destroy the aesthetic look of our beautiful offshore here in Virginia. Can you speak to that aspect of it? What, not just the benefit, we mentioned that, to carbon free, but aesthetically, I mean, what type of impact does that have, if any?
Yeah, so I would ask people just to keep in mind that these turbines will be 27 miles off the coast. And so as you look from a visual perspective, there will be days you may be able to see, the top of the turbines, but it's not like something you would build onshore. And as we have more information and visual portrayals of that on our website, people will be able to look at this. But it won't be a significant impact from an aesthetic perspective.
Wow.
Now, we do have to bring the power onshore to power the homes and businesses. And so, we've been engaging with the communities on the transmission routing in the study areas in order for us to build lines back onshore. And so the lines from the turbines to get to shore will be, on the seabed, so you won't see those either. And then we will have to build, a transmission line onshore in order to get to a substation to tie in.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know you mentioned earlier the monetary investment that Dominion Energy is making into this project, and we know the impacts. We're seeing it, the impacts of climate change for people that thought it was a hoax, and we see it. Sea level rise and all that. So we are in search of these alternative clean energies. So ultimately, what is the benefit or some of the benefits for the Commonwealth for us to have this coastal offshore wind power that we have?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, this project will jumpstart the wind energy industry here in Virginia, and it's allowing the Commonwealth to serve as a supply chain hub for the East Coast because there are other projects that are slated along the East Coast. And it'll create hundreds of jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars in economic output, and millions in tax revenue for the state and localities. But in addition to the economic benefits, as I mentioned before, it serves as a critical resource for meeting the Commonwealth's objective on carbon-free energy by 2045. And just, to give some perspective on that, with delivering almost 9 million megawatt hours of clean renewable energy to the grid, it's like avoiding as much as 5 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually, equivalent to taking more than 1 million cars off the road or planting more than 80 million trees.
Wow.
And then, one of the other benefits you mentioned earlier about, our partnership with Norfolk State and others, we're also partnering with local K through 12 schools and colleges to, introduce new curriculum for environmental and STEM education, as well as some research opportunities in the Hampton Roads as well. So we want to keep local students, in the forefront of these new career paths and participate along the way.
As a matter of fact, I wanted to ask you about the engagement with the community that you've done, and education is a huge part of that. And we see how, STEM education and like we like to call it STEAM education is evolving every single day. And it looks like the energy sector, in part, is leading the way in how we want to create, consume, distribute, and energy so that we can keep going.
So, to that point, you talked about my background earlier. One, I'm standing here because of God's grace. But
absolutely.
The other part of that is education. I mean, that helped create a path for me to be where I am today, working for Dominion Energy. And, we're committed to education. We're committed to, diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything that we do. And just not because it's the right thing to do, because it's good for business. You have better outcomes. There's better community engagement. You get better, innovative ideas and perspectives, and the solutions that we provide are best for our customers. And, so some of the work we've already started that's broader than just offshore wind. Over the summer we announced $5 million in social justice grants. We announced $25 million to HBCUs like Norfolk State and others, and $10 million in scholarships for minority students wherever they go to school. And then, we will continue to work collaboratively to, help enable workforce development opportunities and the supply chain needed, to ensure those jobs land here in our community.
Absolutely. You're listening to State of the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, here on WNSB Blazing Hot 91 on the campus of Norfolk State University. Today, we have the president of Dominion Energy Virginia, President Ed Baine, and we're talking about this phenomenal new project that Dominion is investing in clean energy for our community, the Commonwealth, and abroad of off-coast Virginia offshore wind project. President Baine, you mentioned education, and I believe that education is the key that helps to unlock every single opportunity that we have. Through exposure, through experience, and you mentioned interning and the like, and again, opening up the path for individuals to learn more about it. As it relates to the African American community, though, and communities of color, energy is a part of all of our lives. And I know that sometimes we get a lot of questions about increased energy costs and energy bills and the like, because that's pretty much at the ground floor. How persons think about Dominion Energy and power companies, as we used to call it back in the day. What, other than the effects to the overall Commonwealth, specifically, what are some of the advantage or benefits of this project, offshore wind energy, to African American communities and poor communities?
Yeah, so I would tell you a couple of things. One, we are focused on having safe, reliable, and affordable, as well as clean energy for our customers in the Commonwealth. And we don't take that for granted. And so as we think about our communities of color, That's front of mind for me. And so we make sure that we do that each and every day. And specifically to this project, there will be opportunities for engagement within education, within our African American and communities of color. In addition, we'll be making sure that as we go through these workforce development opportunities, that there is engagement within our community. So not only do you understand what's coming, but people can be prepared. And then from a supply chain perspective, also having the opportunity for minority businesses to understand what those opportunities will be along the way and how they can participate.
As a matter of fact, we talk about this opportunity, of course, impacting the communities, impacting our climate and the like. But we know that everything comes with, you have to create it. So it comes with jobs and career opportunities. Tell us about the job and career opportunities that this new project will help to create for the Commonwealth.
Yeah, so, if you think about jobs, it's all up and down the stream. There will be direct jobs that are associated with constructing the project as well as operating the wind turbines going forward. But there's also projects all and up and down the supply chain, right? There will be turbines that need to be built.
Right.
There will be foundations that need to be installed. There will need to be people that need to man ships that go out for construction and help with inspections. So there will be significant amount of jobs that are associated all up and down the supply chain. And, there's been estimates of, 900 jobs doing construction, 1,100 jobs doing operation. And, those are estimates right now. And as we get further into the project and, working on our supply chain deals, that'll become clearer. But we're putting information out there today. We've been working with the Hampton Roads Alliance on how businesses can register there, and
right.
Having a series of public meetings and forums to provide information, and on our website on coastalvawind.com more information on workforce development as well.
Now, we know that you mentioned the push and the work that Dominion has done for HBCUs, education, and diversity. As it relates to, now historically we know, and one thing that 2020 has uncovered is the lack of diversity in engaging corporations at the supplier diversity level, at the level of what we call large contracting and so forth. So we talk about jobs and careers, but also is there a push or a mechanism for supplier diversity and for professionals such as architects, general contractors, attorneys to engage Dominion with this new project and to be there on the ground for helping to develop it from that aspect?
Absolutely. So first, I think it's good for people to understand our journey. We've been focused on supplier diversity for over a decade. We've had goals internally on how do we continue to improve our supplier diversity efforts. We've increased the amount of supplier diversity spend over that past decade, but we're not satisfied. There's still plenty of work to do, and some work will be done by primes, right, directly, and there will be contracts that way. Some will be done as a contractor for some of the folks who are doing some of the bigger work. And, we're making sure there's mechanisms within those contracts so that those suppliers are focused on that as well. And so I think there will be multiple opportunities from that perspective. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we are using, the Hampton Roads Alliance as a mechanism to get more information out related to those opportunities as well. So there will be more to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, you listen to State of the Water here on WNSB Blazing Hot 91. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we're talking with President Edward Baine, who is the president of Dominion Energy Virginia, about this new phenomenal project, exciting project for clean and renewable energy of coastal offshore wind energy. We've been discussing the impact of climate change. We've been discussing the investment that Dominion has been making in this project and the benefits overall to the Commonwealth and the African American community and other communities of color. And this is a very, involved project. I mean, as you stated, this is something that just didn't pop up yesterday. Dominion has been working on this for some time. Can you give us an idea of the type of labor and work that is going into Dominion getting to this point, of launching this project?
Yeah, so it has definitely been a journey. The leases that are being utilized for this project, I think Dominion acquired those leases offshore in the 2012-2013 timeframe.
Oh, wow.
And we've been working with many stakeholders on the pilot project that ultimately came to fruition at the end of last year, the 2 test turbines, and we're very proud of that because, as I mentioned earlier, that's the first two offshore wind turbines that are in federal waters. So it's first of its kind. And they've been performing well, which gives us confidence about building the bigger project. And there's been a lot of different stakeholders, both from a state and a federal perspective, that have helped us get to this journey, get to this point in the journey. And there's still plenty of work to do. If you think about now, it's 2021. We will be working for all the reviews and permits and other work that needs to be done. Construction really starting in earnest late 22, early 23, and then, building out in phases over 24, 25, 26. So it's still a lot of work to be done to finish the project, but confident that we'll get it done and be able to deliver this clean energy for the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. Can you give us an idea? And I'm trying to look at, I'm envisioning these turbines, and I've done, we've had some engagement, and I've talked with members from Dominion, and I've been reviewing the postcards and the information about this issue. And I see how huge these things are. I mean, it's just not like a little fan that's out there. These are massive structures, and God bless those guys and workers, employees that go up to actually repair those turbines above the water. I know it's a great view, but that's a little bit too high for me. But how many of these mechanisms, these structures, does Dominion envision having offshore at the completion of this project?
Yeah, so for the commercial project, there will be 188 14-megawatt wind turbines.
Wow.
And so that's over 2,600 megawatts of capacity, which if you translate it into how many homes, that's enough to power up to 660,000 homes. And they are tall. They'll be more than 800 feet tall.
Right.
But again, I just remind folks that they're 27 miles off the coast. So from a visibility perspective, not what you would expect. So,
right.
But yeah, they're tall. They're definitely tall.
Absolutely. And look, I just left my eye doctor, so I don't think I'll be able to see them anyway, as I get better. Not as I get older, but as I get better. I mentioned earlier in our discussion, why wind energy and not solar, because I think a lot of people don't really understand how diversified Dominion energy is. So you mentioned we are doing solar and also wind, and of course traditional methods of creating energy and delivering it to the customers. What percentage of renewable energy, and more specifically this wind energy, will be a part of Dominion's total delivery of energy to customers in Virginia?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the Commonwealth and the General Assembly has been very clear on what the mandate is for us. In the Virginia Clean Economy Act that was passed in 2020, it calls for over 16,000 megawatts of solar, 5,200 megawatts of offshore wind, and 2,700 megawatts of battery storage. And so on the solar piece, we'll build over up to 65% of that, and we'll integrate the rest into our grid. So all 16,000 megawatts will serve our customers. we're building the first 2,600 megawatts of the offshore wind, and we'll also be working on the batteries. So, and you need it all in order for the systems to work. As you've seen outcomes in different places across the nation,
right.
We need to make sure that we have a diverse generation mix. We need to make sure that we continue to modernize and have a resilient grid, and ultimately, we need to make sure that we deliver for our customers. Our customers are expecting us to be there 24/7, 365, and that's our charge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for any of us that you click the switch at home, you expect energy to be there. You expect the lights to come on. And for any of us that for some reason our power goes out, it kind of disrupts our entire day. Yeah. So our hearts go out to those who are experiencing power outages in our neighboring states. But that brings me to one of my last questions is, when you talk about creating this energy and batteries and packaging, is this type of energy that's generated by the wind, is it able to be sold and used by other states that don't have the same type of mechanism to create wind power? So
here's what I would tell you. We are in part of the PJM market, which that's a market that covers roughly 13 states. And, there are days where we sell energy into the market, and, that may get used in some other area. And there may be times where we're importing power from another area. But I'll just tell you this, in a regulated environment where we're a vertically integrated utility, it's my charge, it's our charge to make sure we're taking care of the Commonwealth first.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I wanted to make sure that our listeners understood the amount of work that's going in to ensure that when you flip the switch, everything is coming on, and that Dominion is working hard to not just give you energy, but also to protect the environment and creating a new stream of opportunities, jobs, careers for the entire Commonwealth. So definitely it's a heavy lift, and we've had a chance to engage, and I know it's a labor of love for you to be a part of this project and lead the company as you're leading it here in the Commonwealth. President Baine, do you have any last words for us before we end our interview? I can't believe it's been already a half hour.
I know the time has flown by, but I'll just say this. One, thank you for having me. Thanks for what you do and for what Norfolk State does for our kids and our community. This is a very significant project for us. We're engaging the community, trying to get input so that we can do it in the most, the best way as we, for our customers and the communities that we have to build a project. And there'll be more information to come.
Absolutely.
As we move through. And so be glad to, provide that information. And people can visit our coastalvawind.com website to get more information as well.
Absolutely. And this won't be the last time that we engage. We've got some more public engagements that we're going to partner with, that we're going to do. So we'll announce those in the future. But also, as you just stated, President Baine, if you want to learn more about and keep up with this project, just simply go to www.coastalvawind.com. That's coastalvawind.com. Also, you can contact and speak with a project team member if you're interested in these opportunities from a job or career standpoint at 844-319-2065. That's 844-319-2065. Or you can email at info@coastalvawind.com. And again, we'll place this on our website. President Baine, it's been a pleasure, and we look forward to our next time.
Thank you.
Take
care.
Well, for us, again, this is we like to bring not just policy issues, but these very life-changing issues that we have that are coming through and to help the Commonwealth, and not just the Commonwealth, but African-American communities and our communities. What does it mean for us? We see what's happening in Texas when, the cold came and snapped, and we ended up, unfortunately, they having this particular issue, but we see that Dominion's working hard for us, and we're going to move forward and ultimately have the best Commonwealth that we can have. But we'll see you back after this commercial break.
Make sure you wake up early Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. with the Blazing Hot Morning Show.
I'm Cheryl Wilkerson. I'll have your Behold moment, your good news, your headline news, and don't forget, entertainment news.
I'm DJ INC from the Top Ropes. I'll tell you why every day's a holiday. I'll give you the update on those sports and on-the-spot traffic and weather updates.
And check out the Blazing Hot Tea Report with your girl, K Noteworthy, where I'll be serving all the scoop about your favorite celebrities.
And can't forget about the Blazing Hot Morning Shower mix with the legendary DJ Heart Attack. So start your day with us Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on Blazing Hot 91. We'll get through this together.
Blazing Hot 91 celebrates Women's History Month. Blazing the trails. The ladies of history.
Kamala D. Harris, born October 1964, is an American politician and attorney, serving as the 49th Vice President of the United States. Kamala is the first female vice president and the highest-ranking female official in U.S. history. She is the first African American and the first Asian American vice president. Born in Oakland, California, Madam Vice President graduated from Howard University. She began her career in the Alameda County District's Attorney's Office before being recruited to the San Francisco District's Attorney Office after winning the election to District Attorney of San Francisco. She was elected as Attorney General of California in 2010. As Senator Harris, she advocated for health care reform, federal descheduling of cannabis, a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, the DREAM Act, a ban on assault weapons, and progressive tax reform. Joe Biden selected Harris as his running mate in August 2020. Their ticket went on to win the general election in November. Vice President Harris is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority.
Blazing Hot 91 celebrates Women's History Month. Blazing the trails. The ladies of history.
If you have a charity, foundation, or 501c3 organization, and you have an initiative that you would like to partner with Blazing Hot 91, send an email with the flyer to wnsbradio@nsu.edu. And don't forget to include the event name, the point of contact, the phone number, with the date and time and location of the event. Announcements are based on availability.
You're listening to your Blazing Hot music spot.
You're now rocking with the best.
Blazing Hot 91.
Welcome back to State of the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, here on WNSB Blazing Hot 91. Yes, we are continuing to get through this together. For those of you that joined us in our first half hour, we had the president of Dominion Energy, Virginia, President Edward Baine, to talk with us about this new engaging project that Dominion Energy is spearheading of coastal offshore wind energy. Now, again, we do know that we're facing this climate change and our energy sources have to diversify. We know that there are a lot of things that we have to do that we can't do the way we did before, right? So, one thing is energy. So we're thankful for that. For those of you that want to learn more about it, go to coastalvawind.com. That's coastalvawind.com. And we'll have more engagements with Dominion as we move through. But in the second half hour, I want to talk about, again, this is our hot topics time. And, we have guests that come on both half hours and we talk about certain things. But once a month, we have this thing called Hot Topics. And one aspect I want to talk about with Hot Topics, and this is an opportunity for you to give us a call. Let me give you the call number, 757-823-9110. That's 757-823-9110. Now, usually during these segments, our phones are lit up. So if we don't get to you, just hold on or call back. But we'll make sure to get every person on the air. And if we don't get you on the air and you want to comment, just simply go to our Facebook page or go to our website and send us an email and let us know. Or you can still call us and we'll answer it off air for you. So I want to talk about this upcoming trial for George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd. And I'm calling it the murder of George Floyd because the world saw the 8 minutes and 30 plus seconds that the police officer who came there to protect and serve, who was not the arresting officer on the scene initially, had his foot on the neck and of a man begging to breathe, begging to get up. And the subordinate officers, because he was a sergeant, those who were under him were saying, hey, maybe we should let him up, trying to get him up. But again, he would not let him up. Even while people were filming, even while individuals who were first responders, firefighters say, listen, nurses, this guy can't breathe. He's dying. Look, he is urinating on himself. Look, help him up. Just hold him down, detain him, but get your foot off of his neck. And even he pleaded over and over and over again, I can't breathe. It's murder. But he did it so nonchalant. And we're understanding from reports that came out from his history with the police department that, yeah, he has a history of this. He has a history of being aggressive. He has a history of choking people out. He has a history, even as an off-duty officer, working at the same club that George Floyd worked. Okay, so they may come out that they actually knew each other. Okay, so that's another factor that's going to come out in this trial. But, you know, there are many facts that are going to come out in this trial, but I want to talk about this aspect of the trial because of public perception. All right, public perception. The recent poll found that Black Americans were at 64% that viewed Floyd's death as murder, than white Americans at 28%. That is an absolutely huge margin. That's almost over twice, right at 2.5 times. I mean, that is a huge margin. A huge difference. 33% of white Americans, according to this poll, described the incident as negligence on behalf of the police officer, being compared to 16% of Black Americans. Now, first of all, you do know that I am a licensed attorney. I'm a former trial lawyer myself, and I practice tort law, and I understand what negligence is. And to me, just by, again, looking at this video, just an average person, that's no negligence, right? Negligence is pretty much an accident or careless operation, right? All right, I'm negligent. I was looking down at my phone. I didn't see the car stop in front of me. I hit the back of the car, right? That's it's an accident. This was no accident. This was purposeful, right? I mean, according to me, but at least, I'm one that thought the Rodney King beating was also not an accident or neither negligent, but definitely purposeful, right? But we'll get into that. I don't want to get into that right now, but because it brings up old memories. But 60% of those who've heard something about the trial say they hope that he's convicted. It's only 60%, all right? Including 54% of white Americans and 76% of Black Americans. Now, for this poll survey was 1,165 adults online between March 1st and 2nd, which has a margin of error of 3.33 points. And I bring that up because polling is very important. You can make numbers say anything, but you have to give the parameters around it, okay? And you can find this poll at thehill.com, thehill.com. The Hill is the daily publication for everything that happens on Capitol Hill. So you can look at what happens in the House, you can look at what happens in the Senate, what happens in the White House, what happens in the subcommittees, what happens at the U.S. Supreme Court. It's on the Hill. And they simply report things as they happen, okay, as they happen. So this is our public media, how things actually take place in real time. So this comes from thehill.com. You can take a look at this poll. But they're showing, now that's March 1st through 2nd of 2021. But when this happened, all right, the proportion of Americans who think that his death in police custody last May was a murder. So we're talking 10 months, right? 20%. It's down by 20%. What happened in 10 months that changed people's mind? Do you have to see the video again? I mean, to me, that's a head scratcher. As a matter of fact, with the survey, this survey comes with the trial coming in 2 weeks. Jury selection, voir dire, for those who are lawyers out there, happens on tomorrow. Okay? So it's a trial on murder and manslaughter charges. All right? Murder and manslaughter charges. By the way, for the officer who is out on bail, all three of them out on bail. He's out on bail. And another aspect of this case is that he was placed in a section of the jail where the supervising correction officer removed all Black employees, corrections officers, from guarding him. So, that goes to a mindset of how people still think. if quote unquote African Americans are going to look at retribution against this person and risk their careers, right? Now, we see what happened on January 6th for something that was perceived and false. Over 10,000 people risked their careers, their lives, to come charge the Capitol over a lie. Okay? So we know that behavior exists. We know that the behavior that existed during the Civil War. We know the behavior of John Wilkes Booth that assassinated Abraham Lincoln, the reason why he did what he did. We know that behavior is the same behavior if you look at the manifesto of Dylann Roof in South Carolina and compare it with the same with John Wilkes Booth. It's almost similar, eerily similar. So we know that behavior exists. We have evidence for that. But to think that these corrections officers would retaliate against another officer before a trial, with no rhyme or reason. By the way, those corrections officers did file a lawsuit. Discrimination lawsuit, civil rights lawsuit for that, so you can look that up as well. But again, it just kind of gives you an overall picture of how people are thinking here. But he's out. He's out on bail, and he was able to leave the state, quote unquote, for his safety. Okay, but again, George Floyd died May after former officer Chauvin knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes. Now, we know that his death set out, according to this article, and we know it, we saw it in real life, set off a series of protests against police brutality in which no police were killed, okay, unlike January 6th. And a lot of them were peaceful. And when you talk about destruction of property, you're talking about individuals who were busting windows, getting iPhones and hitting stores and out of anger of things that were actually happening. Okay, in a part of the section of neighborhoods that most people don't go to. Okay, not like the beacon of light of democracy, not like the capital of the United States of America. And also, not only did it set off these protests in various cities against systematic racism, it also set off a bill to be named after George Floyd for a police reform bill, which was pretty much aimed at overhauling police standards. Now, again, we want to get your aspect on this. 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. What do you think about the poll that shows that Americans, and more specifically the divide between black and white Americans, that George Floyd's death was a murder, down by 20% in less than 10 months? 20%, down by 20%. What do you think about the aspect of the trial itself? Do you think he should be convicted? Do you think that the officer should be convicted of murder or manslaughter, right? Do you think that the officers who were there with him, who had an opportunity to stop, a bad officer from doing bad things, but did not, do you think that they should also be convicted? And if so, what type of conviction? What do you think? 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. Now, another aspect of this particular poll, again, this poll is from thehill.com. It looked at the USA Today Ipsos poll, which was released on Friday. It also showed that 36% of those surveyed described Floyd's death as a murder, compared to 6% who said the same last June. Okay? So just from last June, it's going down. 17% said that they didn't know how to describe it. What are you talking about? You don't know how to describe it? Compared to only 4% who said the same thing last year. 8% said they believe it was an accident, as opposed to 3% in June. So it looks as if people are giving the benefit of the doubt to the police officer, as opposed to the man who was handcuffed, incapacitated, no threat, begging to breathe, calling for his mother, urinating on himself. His bodily fluids are going wild because he's struggling to grasp to life. His subordinate officers are telling him it's time they let him up, and it was an accident. Was it an accident? I mean, if it was, do you think it was an accident? If you think it was an accident, tell us why do you think. We want to hear from you. 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. Now, I want to talk about the George Floyd bill that passed the House. Of course, it goes to the Senate. It's going to be a lot of, personally, I don't think, I'm not sure if it has a major chance of passing to get there. This may be something that we have to do by executive order, President Biden. But at the same time, you have extremely powerful police unions that lobby against these types of overhauling police standards, more specifically qualified immunity. Now, when you sue someone under what's called a 1983 claim, right? 1983 is a civil rights claim where you sue someone for civil rights under the color of law. That's usually the way that individuals collect damages, more specifically monetary damages against officers that act under the color of law, and they end up, according to the 1983 claim, basically violating their civil rights. Okay, so that's usually the way that individuals who are liable civilly sue actors under the color of law, officers, to collect damages. And that's usually how it ends up. So that's when you get these settlements because officers in their engagement, they end up killing individuals or end up hurting individuals and the like. Very rarely are officers convicted of these incidents because of this issue called qualified immunity. What qualified immunity does, it almost gives a license to do your job, and even if you mess up, even if it's intentional but cannot be proven intentional, but everybody knows it's intentional, all right, from all the surrounding and circumstantial evidence, all right, you can easily ascertain that it was intentional. Qualified immunity does shield quite a bit of the bad acting by individuals operating under what we call the color of law. Okay? So that's usually how that works. So if you take a look, if you do a review of these cases, research, you could do a secondary source research, legal research of these cases, you'll find there's very, very few. And of course, there were some think tanks, Brennan Justice Center, you could take a look there, that shows you that there's very few cases that end up in conviction. And again, I go back to the Rodney King case. Rodney King was a perfect example. I mean, it's a guy who gets a video camera for his birthday. He's testing it out, and he just happens to catch these police cars hitting a man for speeding 40 times with a baton. 40 times. And the ironic thing about that particular case, if that's not ironic, Rodney King and the man that actually filmed it actually met at a gas station. He said, "Hey, I'm the guy that filmed your beating." You know? I mean, think about that. If this guy wouldn't have gotten that camera, for his birthday, if he wouldn't be just trying it out, you know, we're talking about a big VCR camera, right? If he's not trying it out, that beating would have never made it to the screen. But we know that those beatings took place all the time. If we go back and take a look at what we call the hot summer, I think, of 67, 68, where we had over 150, they call it race riots, but documented uprisings. A lot of those were over the interaction between police and black members of those communities. The Watch Riot, a police stop. That's what it was. That's what sparked it. If you look at what happened in the LA riots, the police stop, Rodney King, that's what sparked it. If you go back and look at all of those major big riots that took place, Detroit, it was because of the interaction between members of those communities and the police, right? And we know that through historical record, of course, going back in L.A., since we're talking about Rodney King, we do know that the lone-serving chief, who the police building is named after. If you go back and take a look at YouTube, you know, and of course, they're talking in the language that they talked during the time of the 50s and 60s. You know, he openly recruited officers from the old South, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, because, quote unquote, they know how to handle people like this. Okay? So he pretty much cleaned up the police department for corruption purposes, but said it was okay to basically override the civil rights of people in those communities, right? The Watts, the Comptons, and the historical places that we know today to be historically African-American in L.A., because a lot of blacks went to the West Coast for opportunities and job in the second or third Great Migration, depends on which one you want to label after the Civil War. A lot of African Americans went to the North for freedom purposes. Then after that, the Industrial Revolution, and then over to the West Coast as well for opportunities for education, and then working in, of course, the shipyards there and the like. So however you want to categorize that. I know Wilkerson wrote a book about it. You can take a look at that, called the Seeking Warmer Suns, the warmth of different suns, I believe. But again, this is something that we know that has happened before. So we've seen it. But in that trial, they were like, well, I know they hit him 40 times with a baton. They said he wouldn't get down, in which, there are police tactics where you can hop on an individual. You can put, pressure on their extremities. You can hog tie an individual, right? Because you had 8 officers standing around Rodney King at the time. So they could have hog tied him and put him in the back of the police car or maybe a paddy wagon. But they decided to take turns and hit him 40 different times. I give that historical aspect of Rodney King and George Floyd because these cases are very similar, eerily similar. Individuals that were upset about Rodney King before the trial were like, oh my goodness, this is really bad, right? African Americans saying this happens all the time. Finally, it's on videotape. Something new. It's going to happen. Finally, police are going to be exposed for the bad actors. Now, again, all police aren't bad. We're not saying that. Absolutely not. Being a policeman and a first responder, being in the military, like I served, it is an honorable thing to do. Being a school teacher is an honorable thing to do. Being a priest is an honorable thing to do. But it's only when people who are in honorable positions do bad things that give a bad name to everyone else. But it's up to those institutions to remediate those individuals that do bad things and to hold those individuals accountable. Now, I'm not saying put them in jail. I'm not saying fire them. I'm saying remediate, retraining, reprimand, or whatever the case may be. Give them an opportunity to change. Give them an opportunity to make amends like God gives us. But it's only when these institutions cover it up, after cover it up, after cover up, after cover up, after cover up, then it becomes a problem. So that's my stance on that. I don't believe you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. I believe that everybody deserves an opportunity to make amends, to remediate, to change their lives. I believe that. God gave us all that opportunity to do, right? So we should do the same. By the same measure of mercy and grace that you give is the same measure that you will receive. But all I'm saying is that these two cases are eerily similar. When persons saw Rodney King get beat, when persons saw George Floyd become murdered, individuals say, yes, this is wrong. Almost a year later, before the trial, there was a change in perception. And the race line was the key in that change in perception. Black people saying this happens all the time. White Americans saying, maybe it's not exactly what we think it is. Maybe he was, as I heard one individual I read, he said the police were just doing his job. He was just doing his job. That was in one article released after this poll came out. Of course, different news sources reported. One of my main news sources is thehill.com because of the public policy aspect of it. But I do read many, many others. But The Hill is one of the main news sources that I receive my information. C-SPAN, C-SPAN 1, C-SPAN 2, and C-SPAN 3, because it's something that happens in real time. It's policy studies, not persons that are giving just a take on something just to get ratings. But it's real policy studies. It's things that happen in real time, and you get the word from, of course, the old adage, from the horse's mouth, so that you can make your own decision about it. Okay? So I want us to stay focused on what's going to happen. We have these two cases. They're eerily similar. They're approximately they're almost 40 years. Almost 40 years from each other. Actually, a little bit, right at 30, I believe. I think Rodney King was what scandalous. Look it up for me and let me know when the Rodney King case was. What, 88 maybe? Like 1990, 1991. Oh, 91. Okay. Man, time passes. so we're right at 30 years, right? So right at 30 years, eerily similar. So what's going to happen? Right now, the city of Minneapolis is preparing for riots. They're preparing for what they call, they don't want to say riots, civil unrest in the event that the verdict goes a different way than the people who are out there that wanted to go the way that we believe it should. So they're preparing for that as opposed to just educating the public, right? I mean, I understand public safety. I get it. You don't want what happened the days after George Floyd. But understand this, that the Attorney General, who used to be U.S. Congressman representing that district of Minneapolis, he is under a lot of pressure. Because that's why I want to institute third degree manslaughter, reinstitute that charge. Because they know how hard it is to actually get a conviction against a police officer that even videotape, that even the world, and I'm in interracial movement of Black Lives Matter under the guise of we can't breathe was done across the world, demonstrations. Even in the midst of that, there's still a chance that former officer Chauvin would not be convicted of the greater crime, or probably not even convicted at all. There's a chance that he will get out of jail or maybe get probation. So we'll see. We're going to keep an eye on this. We're also going to keep an eye on the other cases, Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. But we want to stay vigilant. We definitely want to keep our eye on the issues, not just what we see in the news, but we want to dig deep into it to understand that these are changing. The issues are changing, ever changing. And we want to make sure that here on State of the Water that we're on top of it for you. Because without you, we couldn't do what we do. And we want to thank you for joining us every Sunday at 1 o'clock, taking a bit of your time just to listen to us, to be engaged, to be educated about these policy issues that are important to you, the community. Join us next week, same time at 1 o'clock, as we bring you two other special guests. From WNSB, Blazing Hot 91, we'll see you next time.